Eccoci qua, buonasera a tutti, benvenuti a questo evento. È il primo evento che organizziamo in streaming, in diretta streaming, e ne approfittiamo anche per dare un benvenuto a chi ci segue da casa. È il primo di una serie di tanti altri eventi che faremo e saranno tutti organizzati con degli ospiti nazionali e internazionali. Saranno tutti qua presso la nostra showroom di Milano. Non perdo altro tempo perché oggi sapete tutti qual è l'argomento che tratteremo. Sarà l'argomento basato tratteremo sicuramente la Neve Genesys Black con James Townend. Quindi James, ti lascio con i nostri ospiti e you have control.
Okay, I don't know how everyone's English is. Scusa, non posso parlare bene l'italiano.
It's perfect.
So, yeah, yeah. So is that English is così or yeah? Okay. Well, we got to work together then. So if we don't understand something, and it's okay just to say, and we can talk together to get it. So let's stop the jazz for a second. Thank you very much for coming and seeing this. And so we'll just very casual, I think, and we'll just talk about the console and just do some examples. And has everyone seen this before? Is it? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you've seen it before. Yeah, good. Yes. So yeah, we'll just do a little introduction, if that's okay, and then we'll move on and actually do something hopefully more interesting. So, but we should probably just talk about it just so we get an idea of the console. So this today we're looking at the Genesys Black. And this version is a 8-channel. It's called the GB16, and it's called the 16 because it has it's an inline console. So does everyone know an inline console? So this means that we have 8 inputs into the channel and 8 inputs into the monitoring section. So essentially, it's just like the older big Neves, same layout and very very similar signal flow, but you'll just see a few changes to make it more useful for a modern studio. So hopefully tonight we can talk about what makes this a bit different to the other consoles. So underneath this console, it's a very traditional analog console. So all the signal flow is all analog. The EQ, dynamics, it's all analog, but there's a lot of digital control to try and make it faster to use, faster recall. And they also this example has the digital interface. So let me tell you about. So tonight, this system that we're looking at, we see the console, and then we have my old, very tired MacBook, and we just have a RME MADI interface. And so you can see, well, maybe you can see there's a connection for the USB for the MADI, and then there's a Ethernet for the DAW control. So, and then normally in a studio we'd have the DAW screen here, and then maybe the Genesys screen on a switcher or maybe on a small screen. But just because you guys are sitting, it's easier to see the software here, I think. But again, this is a normal TFT, so you can display the Genesys software or Pro Tools or whatever. So, but for this system, it's very simple. We have a computer, a MADI interface, and one cable to the console for the audio. So again, on this system, this gives us 16 channels input and 8 channels output. So, but it's possible to expand the console up to 64 channels. So it becomes a big console. And it's also possible to expand it later. So if you buy a console, small console, and then you want more channels in the future, you can expand it just 8 channels each time. Minimum is 8.
Side by side.
Exactly, yeah. And usually people want it symmetrical, you know. But sometimes some control rooms, you know, you can customize it either side, yeah. And so just to finish the sort of options, so we know we can have it with the digital option. And also the other thing you look when you see the console is that the channel strip's quite small, and that's because there's no controls in the channel for the EQ and dynamics. So even though it's analog EQ and dynamics, the controls are digital. So if I select an EQ, we can see the controls on the screen or using controls in the monitor section like a digital console. So this means we have a small channel, which is good, hopefully. It's good for the back, and it also means you can copy and paste and link very easily. Because a lot of people will buy a console and then they don't use the EQ because it's too much time to recall, and it's not for us, we wanted to try and make it so that you could always use the EQ automatically without having to think, oh, now I need to recall or take pictures or, So there's two options for the EQ. This console here has this one, which is from the 88R. The 88R is the big flagship analog console, like at I don't know, Abbey Road and Capitol and Sony and lots of the big studios have this console. So it's the 4-band EQ, modern, clean EQ. A lot of people like it. And there's also, you have the option of the 1084 EQ, which is a classic. It's just a modified 1073. So I think it has more filter. I think it has different filter settings. And this is a very traditional EQ.
It's the same circuits.
Yeah. So it's but other than there's a different filter. The 1084 is like a slightly modified 1073. It's the high pass. Good question. Yeah, I think it's I need to double check now. But yeah. So the original 1073 had a very simple EQ, and then the 1084 was a slightly modified. Came a couple of years later and had a bit more useful filters. I'll double check because my memory is. Yeah, exactly. So and a very different sounding EQ to this one. So a very wide EQ, and so how it works is that you have a circuit board with the 8 EQ circuits on it, and it's like a hardware plug-in. So plug it into the console in 8s, and you can. So it's possible to mix and match and have the different EQs together. I think you have this on yours, and so it's. This doesn't have to be a traditional console. You can have a mix of EQs. Some people. If you know that you have a large project, 60, 70 tracks, and you're going to always be summing into the console, then it doesn't matter. You can have 8 old EQs, 8 new EQs. You can use it very differently to an old console. So you have 2 possibilities for the EQ, and then the dynamics. So the compressor and the gate is the 88R design. So. And again, it's optional. You can make a customized quotation for when you talk about it. So some people, it's very important. They want the summing and they want the monitoring, but they're not interested in the EQ, and they might or maybe they want to buy that later. It's very simple. It takes 10 minutes to add the EQ. So again, even that's a little bit different to other consoles. So. This console has the EQ, but this doesn't have the dynamics, this one. So this is basically the simplest configuration. So it's the 88 EQ, and it's the digital board for the channels. The only other option is for the monitoring and the buses. It's also possible to get a digital card for these buses. So you can get the 8-track buses, the stereo mix, the second stereo mix, and the aux outputs as digital outputs. And again, some people want this, some people don't need it. Some people already have some kind of external converters, maybe, or they have the Pro Tools set up, and they're not interested in the Neve converters. Or sometimes, if it's a new installation, then it can save a lot of cable, make a very simple installation to have the digital system as well. So there's 2 or 3 possibilities when you order the console. So we'll just do a quick I'm trying not to do too many specifications because it's very boring, but we'll talk about what this has, just to give you the picture of the console. So this is in this size, the smallest size, we have 8 microphone amps, and they are basically the 1073 circuit, same transformer, very, very similar circuit, other than it's made onto a channel with modern assembly. So if you know the Neve microphone amp sound, then you'll know the sound of these channels. The difference is obviously these are recallable and inside the console, so no patching needed. And then we have compressor, an EQ, and 2 inserts. And the inserts can be moved between the channel and the monitor, or large fader and small fader. It's possible to move. Well, it's possible to move everything anywhere, really. It's very flexible. And then we have 4 mono auxes and 2 stereo auxes. And then the channel faders, 8 buses here, and then 2 stereo mix buses. So we have the main stereo mix bus, and then we have a second stereo mix bus called a 2T. We'll talk a bit more about that one later, maybe with an example. But it's very useful because it has the second mix bus. Some of this is for the 5.1 mixing, and some is for stereo. So we'll give some examples as we talk. And then the difference with this console, there's 2 types of console, Genesys and Genesys Black. And tonight we're going to talk about Genesys Black. And the Genesys Black has these dedicated DAW faders here. So these are there's no signal here. This is a dedicated controller. And so with a screen and some meters, dedicated DAW meters here. And this is simply because we would make a console and sell it, and the customer would install it in a studio, and then they get a controller and put it on top of the console, and they'll get a screen and put the screen in front. And so we just realized this is how people are working now. They're always editing until the end of the project, and it's just different now. So we placed a keyboard shelf, permanent DAW faders, and the TFT, so that acoustically it's in a good place. So it's a simple thing, but it took us a long time to do it, from seeing how things were in studios. So this is the big difference between the Genesys Black and the Genesys. So we have, and if you, the DAW is the most important thing, then this system is probably this is the reason for this system. Of course, it's still possible to flip the console and make the whole thing a controller. There's a DAW button, and this will make the whole console become a controller. So hopefully tonight we'll talk about how there's many different ways to use the console. It doesn't have to be a traditional console. So some people will always use it as a controller, but in the background they'll be summing, they'll be tracking through the mic preamps, they'll be using the monitor controller, but they're not using it like a traditional console, And other people will use it in a very traditional way, and there's no right or wrong. So hopefully tonight this is the thing that will communicate that you could use it 5 or 6 different ways. And so because it's there's many options, you have to, for a commercial studio especially, they want it to be if it's a freelance mixer perhaps, they want it to be friendly for the mixer, or a lot of these go into artist studios, and of course an artist doesn't want to spend any time learning the console, but they just want it to be the same every day. Then they turn the power on, it recalls exactly like before. So the console is very useful for these applications. Anyway, we'll keep moving on, and I'll try and jump about a bit and get some variety so it doesn't get too boring. So again, you can see that in this setup we have the audio connection from the computer. In fact, I should use the buttons. And we have transport control, fader control. again, this screen is a touch screen, so it's possible. Normally we'd put the DAW on here because, again, most of the time with the Genesys software you'll set up the session in the morning and then you'll be mainly concentrating with a DAW. But just wanted to be able to show everybody that we have touch control here of the software. So there's lots of different ways to work. So yeah, so a couple of ways. Some people, again, the question. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Oh yeah, repeat it. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So if I understand, you were saying, is it possible to switch between the two and on here? Yeah. And it's a good question because there's two possibilities. Sometimes people like just to have the Genesys software on a small screen, maybe at the side, because I say you don't need it all the time for starting the session in the morning, finishing the session at night, or if you're routing, or then sometimes it's nice to see the screen. So some people will put the stuff on a small screen. Other people will switch, like you said, because we have the keyboard and mouse on USB and the touch input. So you can use a very simple KVM, because it's just a normal monitor with a USB and a HDMI for video. So a very simple, 20, 30 euro KVM switch will let you switch between the Genesys and the DAW very quickly and use just one keyboard and mouse. So for some people, this is the best way. So some people like to have the screen see both all the time, in which case, and we would recommend just a small screen. Yeah. Later on, I'll tell you about there's quite an exciting new development, but I don't want to talk too much because it isn't here yet. But it will give you the direction that the console is going, and this will affect the question. So I'll thank you for the question, and I'll talk some more about that later as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we'll just do some simple examples maybe, and yeah. And so what's the easiest way to do it? Maybe today, rather than just me trying to explain every control, we'll just do some comparisons of how we'd maybe do a simple tracking session and how we'd mix, and this might be a bit more interesting, maybe. So yeah, okay. So let's think of the simplest possible setup, because I'm very traditional, so I like to use a console for everything, and I don't like working in the box too much, and this is my preference. But we'll start with the opposite way. So let's imagine we were just working in the box, and here we have the 8 mic amps, so we were going to do some recording. What we would do, we would set the channels to be channel input. So each channel we can have a microphone input, a line input, an analog DAW input if you have external converters, or the Neve digital line input. So anything blue is digital. So at the moment, I think you can see these blue. So at the moment, the channels are set to the digital line input. But if we were recording, we'd switch them to microphone. So we would switch the channels to be microphone inputs. We would get the metering on here, adjust the microphone gain. And because it's a Neve design, it's 5 dB steps. So it's an encoder, but actually it's switching hardware 5 dB, because otherwise it's not a Neve, Yeah. So and then we'd get our signal, and then we would use the direct outputs normally directly to the DAW. So on this console we have a pot here to adjust the direct output level, and we have a few options. But basically, the direct output can be from the channel or the monitor, and it can be pre-fader or post-fader, and it can be pre-processing or post-processing. So you can either come into the mic input and directly to the DAW. You can come into the mic input, then the EQ and dynamics, and then to the DAW, or also post-fader as well. Exactly. So each channel you can have different options, and there's also a trim.
Direct output exists just when you use the mic or the line channel.
Yeah, it's an analog output as well. So yeah, you can use the MADI output.
No.
Sorry.
When you have just the pre,
Yeah.
or if you have just a line channel.
Yeah.
Without pre, you have the direct output.
Exactly. Yeah. So whatever input is selected, this goes to the direct output. Yeah.
Okay.
And because you have a trim, you can also, if you're doing some tricks like a very hot input, and you can attenuate the output.
And the direct output for the monitor session, you have it, no?
Yeah, you can switch it. So you can have the same options. It's difficult to see here, but you can have, it says monitor, so I can have channel and then monitor pre-post fader.
Okay.
So from the channel, pre-post fader and processing, or from the monitor.
It's good for the stems.
Exactly, yeah. So if you're printing stems through, you can print stems through and straight back. Yeah.
Switching with the monitor.
Yeah.
Section, and you back in the DAW with
Yeah. So because of this, quite often it's good to create some templates. So you can make a mixing template, a tracking template, and because you have so many possibilities, then it's good to save these things. So we'll do the tracking, continue that. So for me, I always like to EQ when I'm recording, but so I would put it to be channel pre-fader. So it means I get the mic amp, the EQ dynamics, and the inserts if I'm using the inserts, and then to the DAW. So I would go through and do that on the channels, and then for me, I would bring the returns in to the small fader, which is a traditional way of working. But what a lot of people will do is just have a stereo output from Pro Tools, mix in the box, and they would bring that as an external signal directly to the monitor section. So again, especially now, studio time, the sessions are so much shorter. Sometimes people don't want to bus their session across the console and do a lot of complicated bussing. They maybe have a session and they come to your studio and they want to record some drums, let's say. So they'd get the direct outputs into the session, but they don't want to bus through the console. So they would just maybe use a stereo output to there, mix in the box using the DAW faders, and just take the direct outputs into the session. So it doesn't have to be one-to-one like everything. This is the difference with this console, hopefully. So the other thing I should probably show you at this time is a way to visualize the order in the channel. So here I'm looking at channel 1, and I can see that I have an input for the channel, mic line or DAW return. It goes to the first insert, then to the EQ, and then out to the fader. And now I can change this order, or I can take the second insert and put it on the channel. And again, I can move the order. And if I had the dynamics, again, we would see the dynamics here. So we can move the order, any order, and move them to be on the channel path or the monitor path. So you can, if you're printing, if you're tracking, you can have EQ on the tracking, and then when you mix, you can move them down onto the monitor path to use them again for mixing.
Basically, you patch the hardware through the digital control.
Yeah. So, it looks like a plugin, but it's actually switching. If you listen, you can even hear some click, 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 as it switches it. And, this is actually more flexible than the 88R, which is strange because the 88R is about 10 times more expensive. But the nice thing with this console, it was a fresh start for the control. So the audio hardware is very similar, but just to have the control is is different. And then I kind of mentioned it before, but also we're developing I'll mention it now, we're developing a plugin to be able to control this stuff directly from within the DAW. Now, unfortunately, we're very close to having something to show you, but I don't have anything to show you tonight. But I've seen it working, and we made this announcement, and that's going to be very interesting as well. So, because then you'll be able to do these operations and EQ and dynamics within the DAW, and then it's fully automated and immediate recall when you open the session. So next time, where's he gone? Next time I come to, yeah, exactly. So it'll be cool. So hopefully next time I come back to Italy, hopefully next time I can show this. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we'll make an event when it's released. Yeah. Okay, so you get the idea.
How do I connect the Genesis software with the DAW control when I use the plugin? Basically, I just need a network cable in the DAW PC.
Yeah, so it's we use some free software.
Everything will be in the same machine.
Right, yeah, we use some free software called IP MIDI.
Okay.
So it's MIDI over Ethernet, and it's a free down. Well, for some reason it's free on the Mac, and you have to pay for the PC version. But yeah, it just shows this gives you it's the Huey well, on Pro Tools it's the Huey emulation, HUI, and then for Logic and Cubase it can be Mackie Control, which gives you a little bit more options. So again, it's nice because it's not many cables. You know, you have
The automation was guaranteed for all parts of the console.
which so
All the knobs, all the fader is all automated.
yeah. So there's two types, let's say. So all the faders, the switches, EQ dynamics, the busing, the sort of preferences and selections, they're all immediate recall, or reset is better, let's say. And then for the pots, because the pots aren't motorized, you do a traditional recall. So we'll show you. The best thing is to demonstrate, and then you can see. Because the nice thing is, because it's a small channel, the recall's very fast. But yes, so all the buzzers, EQ dynamics, faders, switches, preferences. Yeah, exactly. So, and again, because you don't have to use it like a traditional console, sometimes, because it's mostly the auxes on the pots, sometimes you don't need to recall the pots, or maybe you just need to recall one or two. So you don't have to do the full recall every time. So we'll do it as a good example. Yeah. Yeah, well, let's do it. I could talk or we could do it, so let's do it. Yeah, it's a good time. So let me save this. So I just saved a snapshot, and now I'm going to recall something else. So now you'll see it loads a snapshot, it resets this panel. And then that should be it. Yep. Okay, so now everything is back, the routing, the buses, everything, except for the pots. And so now it's optional. It says, do we want to recall? I'm going to recall. And then what I see here, I see 1, 2, 3 sections of the channel. So when I look at this, I need to make this disappear. So I can see here that the pan needs to be left, and that section's finished. I can see here that this aux needs to be there, this aux there, that needs to be left, and then this aux here, and then the pan, the level here is cut, and that's it. So when you're familiar with the layout, it's pretty fast, and you don't have to do it all. So if I press hold, I can just choose which channel I want to recall. So this must be a very different session because each one is different, and I can look and see that aux needs to be there. Oops, that should be there, that there, and then the channel's clear. So I don't know, maybe a couple of minutes to change, to do a full recall. 2-3 minutes. It's not a long time, especially when you're familiar.
What you're doing is it does recall, so it sounds right, but the pods don't match. So if you have to update something, that's why you're matching the pods.
Yes, the main thing that you'd recall for is the pans, because the pan is still a pot.
Okay.
So, but the aux, like I say, for tracking, this would normally be a headphone mix or something. So maybe you don't want to recall it. So you can choose how much to recall.
Okay, but what I mean is,
Sorry.
say you're recalling a mix and you just need to change something on one channel.
Yeah.
You recall the thing, but you only match one channel.
Exactly, yeah.
And the rest
So-
sounds the same without touching the knobs.
Absolutely,
Is that right?
yes.
Okay.
So we go solo here, and we just match that one channel. And it,
Right.
Yeah. So again, if I load the mix from earlier, so I'm going to return to the original setup. There we go. And that comes back. It moves, and I'll do it again. So here it's the pan, because I had this jazz mix just perfect, so I want it back exactly. And now it's gone straight to channel 5. And channel 8. And that's it. And it scans again in case I moved anything by accident. And so, I don't know how long that took. Maybe a minute or something. Doesn't take a long time. So yeah, this is it's better to demonstrate than to talk. For me to talk, it's easier to demonstrate it. And apparently, our recall is a very accurate recall. It uses the pots have 2 layers, so there's a separate layer for the recall. So it gets it very precise. So the mix recall is very very accurate, yeah, compared to the older consoles from the 70s and 80s.
So the Genesis is not black, not Genesis.
So it's the same on both. Same on
It's the
both.
same.
Yeah.
It's the same.
They run the same
For
software.
For the monitor is touch.
Yeah, so this is just the Genesis Black has this monitor.
Touch, yeah.
So the people that buy the Genesis Black are the ones who use the DAW from the beginning, middle, and end. And the people who buy the Genesis usually is the people who maybe they have the screen and keyboard at the side, perhaps, and it's just a different workflow. Yeah. So perhaps more traditional on the Genesis, and the Genesis Black is a bit more hybrid. Okay, so what else can we do now? So we've done a bit of the channel. We'll keep moving around. So maybe we'll look at the center section stuff. So we know, well, yeah, the easiest way to introduce it is, so we have the channel here, and we have 2 faders and 2 pans, let's say. For space, this is a pot, but this is a small, technically it's the small fader. So if you ever used a big inline console, this is a small fader. So you notice there's no EQ in dynamics. You also know there's no switches at the top for the buses. Normally on a Neve, or same on the SSL, you have the switches at the top. So on the Genesis, you have it on screen. So here I'm looking at the channel, and I can see that all the channels are going to the main mix. So this is the mix left and right. So if I want to route channel 1, instead of going to the mix, I want to route it to bus 1, I can just unroute it from the mix and send it to bus 1, or maybe bus 1 and 2 in stereo. So now I can see on the meters, and if I play some audio, hopefully, yep, I can see channel 1 is now feeding bus 1 and 2. And something else as well. Oh yeah. What else? Oh, yeah. And of course I don't have anything on there. Yeah. So now channel 1 is feeding bus 1 and 2. So it's quite a nice, or I can make it feed bus 3 and 4. So it's a nice, easy way to work. It's just like, you know, the I/O page in Pro Tools or something. It's simple. And of course, the main thing is that it comes back immediately, because that's one of the long parts of the recall is doing all the switches on the top of the channel. Now, because it's an inline console, we have 2 pages. So this is the monitor, which is this section. Again, I have separate routing for this. And so again, the little Genesys has more routing possibilities than a big 88, you know, because of the software control. So again, the small fader can access all the buses and all the mix buses. So that's quite interesting. It's this is being able to do it digitally gives us so many more options. So yeah, we have these completely the same for both the channel and the small fader. So you genuinely have 16 inputs into this small size console. The other thing here we can see on the routing is that the buses can go to the main mix. So again, now these are feeding the mix, but they don't have to. They have their own inputs. They have their own outputs, and they have their own inserts on the 8 tracks. So you can use them just to group things and process them, or you can use them to feed the mix, or you could use to print stems. Maybe you'd subgroup to here and then print these stems back into Pro Tools or whatever. And then finally, the only other option on here is the effects returns. We have 4 stereo effects returns at the top, and again, they can go to the main mix, or they can feed the buses below. So we have, is it on? Yeah, we have a very expensive and complicated reverb there that I don't know how to use, you know, but if we were to find something, we have it on an aux, and so I can...
Want me to set up the...
This is where you get to look really clever now.
Yeah. H9000.
So again, we
it's already on. It's actually already on, so...
Yeah? Okay, great. So we have an effects return here, and it's feeding the main mix. Are we getting that? Oh yeah. Changing there. I can see the aux is... aux 1 is sending, yep. Yep. Okay, so we have these 4 stereo effects returns, and again they're just an extra stereo inputs into the console. They have one nice feature, which is this stereo width control here. Do you know the 8816 summing mixer? Has anyone seen this one? Yeah. Yeah. Great. So you have?
8816.
So do you use the narrow wide? Yeah? Do you like it? Yeah, good. Okay, so we have 4 on here. So again, people really like this effect, and sometimes, so it doesn't have to be for reverbs, obviously. People sometimes patch a mix through it because it's nice analog MS effect. Yeah. So again, that's quite a nice little feature. People use this for, doesn't have to just be for reverb. So we have 4 stereo widths, and then what headphone systems are people using? Do people use the Hearback and the Aviome and the what generally do people use for headphones here?
Sta chiedendo che tipo di sistema cuffio normalmente utilizzate.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Sennheiser.
Right, yeah. And for the headphone monitor controller,
Headphone monitor controller, proprio sistema di amplificazione per le cuffie.
Ah, no, okay, yes.
do people use individual, like my mix and Avio?
Yes, I mean, it means the airbag, yes, the airbag, for instance.
Yeah, okay. So this is very popular.
It's popular, yes,
Yeah.
very popular in Italy, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So you can send directly to from the aux send.
Yeah. So again, a lot of people are working like that now. So they pick some inputs to go to the headphone mixer, but also there's a nice feature with the effects returns where you can send a reverb directly to the headphones, but without going to the mix. So
Okay.
if you're tracking and an artist, a singer wants some reverb and they want a lot of reverb to sing and you don't want to hear it, you can send it directly to the headphones.
Yes.
Without monitoring.
With the airbag you can do it. I mean, hai detto il corso in Italian, con l'airbag lo puoi fare, puoi alzare la matrice del riverbero in cuffia, si alza la matrice del riverbero in cuffia dall'artista direttamente, ma tu non senti niente qua. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can have it on your...
Yeah. So there's kind of a fader for the mix and then there's a fader for the headphone send. So it's a small feature, but it's useful. Yeah. Okay, we're moving pretty fast. We have the 4 mono and 2 stereo auxes. The only real limitation is that just for space, you could only send to one of the 2 stereos at a time. So you can send to aux 5 or aux 6, but not together. But this is just important just to keep the size down. So it's better to mention that. So we 2 stereo auxes, but you can send to one or the other. But an interesting thing, we have this switch called I'd call it the float switch. And what this switch does, it disconnects this pot and sends the signal to bus 7 and 8. So you can get an extra stereo effect send. So I'm trying to think of a good example. But yeah, let's imagine we had an extra effect send. We could take this pot here, so either individually 7 and 8 or here 7 and 8, and now this aux will send to bus 7 and 8. So it's like having 3 faders now. So you have the channel fader, the monitor fader, and then another fader for another mix there. So you can actually do 3 mixes together. So maybe you're making a headphone mix, or maybe you're making a monitoring mix and a I don't know, used to be a broadcast mix or something, but you have this possibility to make 3 different mixes. So again, it's very powerful for a small console. And I can't think of any good examples, but yeah. So sometimes submixing things to a stereo headphone feed, but where you need an extra pot. It's a useful feature. Okay, otherwise, I mean, that's most of the channels. So inserts. We have a traditional stereo mix insert, and then we have a parallel mix insert. Again, it's the same on the 8816, but a lot of people like it to do parallel compression on the final mix, and it's just nice to have a dedicated control, so that we have a blend control for the parallel compression, and they're a traditional stereo mix insert. This console doesn't have a bus compressor or anything like that, so you have to supply your own. But that's just, most of the Neves don't have a main compressor. It was always kind of an option, so nothing different there. Does anyone mix 5.1? Or is it mostly stereo? Yeah?
We mix mono.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, we won't talk too much about 5.1. Maybe at the end we'll just talk a little about it in case anyone's interested. But there's some stuff in the routing and the busing for 5.1 that's quite interesting. But we'll talk about that at the end. I won't waste lots of time then. What I will mention is the second stereo mix bus. So we have this thing here. It says 2-track, and this is a second mix bus that's created from the 8-track buses. And this is very useful. Sometimes you want to print a different version of a mix, maybe with a higher vocal, or maybe you want to print an instrumental and a full mix at the same time, perhaps. So unfortunately, there's no faders for it. It's all on screen, but it's you can see here, these are the 8 buses. So I can have on and off, and then this is a fader. So I can make a mix, and I can monitor it in here. I can listen to this second mix bus, and I can modify it here. And so it looks very simple, but it's nice to have a completely separate stereo mix, second stereo mix. So for instance, if you wanted to do a vocal higher, you know, and your vocals on 1 and 2, you could maybe put this up 1.5 dBs, and then you've got your vocal high mix on the 2T, and then your normal mix on the main mix fader here. So again, it's just worth that you see this, because when you're comparing it to the other consoles for the similar pricing, this is quite a nice feature to have. All right.
With second track interface, the fader does not work, in fact. You are feeding the second track with the 8-track bus.
Yeah, all the fader control is on screen for this, so there's no physical faders.
Okay,
again,
so
this was originally, the history is originally this was for a stereo fold down from a 5.1 mix. So you'd mix in 5.1, and then you'd say, I want center and subwoofer and left surround, right surround, and you give a percentage to mix those into this 2T bus. And then later on, we realized that this is actually very useful to have this second bus. So this screen happened. So physically, there's no fader for it on the console. So we have the send faders. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the output fader is here. So is that answering the question?
yeah, but the only question is the position of the fader does not affect.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, yeah. So you can have it pre or post these faders.
Okay, perfect.
So if you want to match this, you know, if you're using this as part of the mix, you can match this, or you can switch it to be pre or pre fader as well. So
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
good question. Okay, any other secrets we haven't talked about? That's most of the buses and things. We have 2 headphone Q mixers. So again, a lot of times, like we were saying, a lot of times now people use My Mix or the headphone boxes, but sometimes people still, well, it depends on the artist, I think. Some artists like to have lots of control, and some definitely don't, you know, and they want you to do all the work. So these Q mixers here are very, very fast. So sometimes you know better what they want to hear, and sometimes they know better what they want to hear. So you have to adjust it for different people, different experience. And so these headphone cues in the console, it's just a small, almost like a matrix mixer on a live console. So you can use the main mix, some of the auxes, or one of the externals into the monitoring section, and you can make a little mix here, a blend mix for a headphone mix. So usually you'd have like a singer's mix and a band mix, or a conductor mix and an orchestra mix, you know. So so even if you have one of these complicated headphone monitoring systems, sometimes people will still send a Q mix to that box to be able to do a full mix very quickly. So you don't always have to send individual instruments. Sometimes you'll just send the headphone mix and maybe 1 or 2 individual instruments just to make it easy, you know. So these are very just very nice because they're quick, and there's some EQ on there, and you can monitor them using the monitor, so you can listen and you can make a headphone mix for someone as a blend from the auxes and the main mix. As far as the monitoring goes, we have the possibility for 4 sets of speakers, 4 different speaker types, and 2 of those can be 5.1. It's Yeah, 4 speaker sets. Yeah.
Externally in.
So the speaker out is 4.
Okay.
External in is 4. Yeah, it is 4. So again, well, it's yeah, you're right, the same. So 2 5.1 and 2 stereo, or obviously 4 stereo it can be. And there's also a digital. I talked at the beginning with the digital option. You can have a digital external input as well. So a lot of people use a digital external as the main output from Pro Tools. So it's possible to bypass the console and go directly into the monitoring. So again, someone who doesn't know the console, they can just have the Pro Tools output going directly to the monitoring.
You're using the Genesis in the same mode.
Yeah. Okay. And again, you can use.
You listen the mix.
Yep.
Compare.
Yeah.
You can compare.
Exactly. Yeah. So like if you have some mastering effects or something, you can compare. Yeah. So, but I should mention that digital external is the option with the digital card for the buses. So here, I don't think we have it. Yeah. So we don't have that card installed in this console, but exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so it's exactly like you were saying. If you want to compare the main mix inside the box, outside the box, and on the console, you can use the exactly. Yeah. So just the same as if you were printing to 2-track. You still do the same thing. So yeah, and so we have 4 externals plus the digital external. We have 4 speaker sets that can be 2 5.1, 2 stereo. And then we can listen to the internal signals on the console, the 6 auxes, the 2 headphone mixers, the surround mix, the main mix, and then the 2-track mix that we talked about before, and then externally, or we can sum them together. So we can. It's for the size of the console. It's a very powerful. Again, it has more features than the 88, which is much bigger. So this is just because time. Time. Yeah. It's very clean, and because you'll notice when the monitoring level is stepped, and it's because it's not a part. It's literally switching precision resistors. So it's the stereo image is absolutely, I mean, it should be, but yeah. So and it's just reassuring because a lot of consoles they just have a stereo pot, and just doesn't track, So this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas you can hear it. I think can you hear the? Yeah. So it's done in hardware, how it should be. There's a lot of the options on there as well. There's a lot of 5.1 options. You can, if you have one 5.1 speaker set, and then you can have a second LCR set and keep the subwoofer and keep the rear surrounds to compare. Like if you were doing if you had a film style 5.1 setup and then maybe a sound bar to see what it would sound like for a television, you can keep the rear surrounds, so you don't need to buy 2 complete sets. It's little details, but it's quite powerful, and you can make the filter for the subwoofer, and you can customize everything. So the dim level is very, very deep. Yeah. So I can set that to be 10 dB now, and it'll show me. So everything is you can really personalize it.
Can you talk about it?
Yeah. So you can see sort of 3 types of meters. Channel meters here. These are DAW meters, and these are a bit fun. These are basically these are just displaying the information from Pro Tools. So whatever Pro Tools sends to us, we display there. So that's why they look like that. But they're useful to see if there's a signal there, And then so the channel meters can look at 3 things. They can look at the input to the channel, the output to the DAW, and the return from the DAW. So at the moment they're looking at the channel input. If I look at the send, I can see that I'm not sending anything at the moment, but I could switch something on maybe, and yeah. And now I've turned it off again. So now I'm sending, this is it again, if I wanted to print channel 1, I could see that I'm now sending channel 1 input to the direct output. And then I can see Pro Tools returns or the small fader inputs. I've got just 2 channels because it's a 10 channel session. So I'm using 1 to 8 on the channel and then 9 and 10 going to the monitor here. So there's 3 possibilities for the channel meters. These are permanently DAW meters. Here we can see the buzzers, or we can see the aux outputs. And then these other 2 inputs show us what we're listening to in the control room, or which external we're listening to. And the reason we can assign that here is because if we want a 5.1 meter, because there's 8 meters here, we can see left, right, center sub, left surround, right surround. So we put this option in just so that if you were doing a 5.1 mix, you could see a 5.1 meter. And then finally, this meter is the main mix, or whatever we're listening to in the control room. The second, that 2T mix, or the headphones. So I can monitor the 2 Q mixers. We have options that at the moment we're looking at the PPM meters, or we can make them horrible, nasty VU meters. VU, virtually useless, you know. But yeah, so you can VU or PPM. You can have the peaks on or off, or hold the peak so it'll hold the maximum level. You can also, where it gets bright here, you can change this level. So if you're using an external converter, you can change the clip point of the converter. So you can, if your converter clips at 22 dB, you can change this portion here. The headroom of the Genesys converters is 26 dB, so very high headroom. It's good. Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's always the other equipment that will.
It's no end.
Yeah, exactly. So we have. I'm trying to think of other interesting features. Could talk about solo isn't very interesting, but let's talk about the solo system because there's some good stuff on there. We have the AFL PFL solo, so I can pick an instrument and monitor it. Or we have the destructive solo, where I can cut everything else. Or we also have a third type, which is called solo in front. So, and what solo in front does is you solo the individual channel, but it gives you a % of the main mix behind it. So if I do solo in front, and if I solo, which is bass is channel 6. So now this is the electric bass, hopefully. Oh, not electric, upright bass. Yeah, but I can go and blend in the mix behind it, and this is really nice for like a context. If you're EQing a drum or something, it's nice to EQ the drum with a little bit of the mix behind it, because sometimes you solo a drum and you do a very precise EQ to it, and then you take the solo off and it doesn't fit the mix, you know. So this, just having this blend is a very nice. It's just a simple feature, but it's very useful, and it's very difficult to do that. Very difficult to do that in the box, and it's very easy to do it on an analog console. So sometimes there's an advantage to having a console. Already, wow, it's going so fast. Yeah. So yeah, the solo in front's quite a nice little feature that can potentially save a lot of time. We should talk about the DAW control stuff. So obviously we've got three different ways to control the DAW directly. We've got a keyboard and mouse, which for a lot of people, you know, if you spent a lot of time memorizing all the keyboard commands, then you need a key. You know, it's just how it is. Obviously we've got the faders, and with the faders, how do you do it on this? You know, we have faders, but also solo cut and automation modes. So there's some limitation because Avid only let us use the HUI, the HUI protocol. So we're not pretending it's the same as an S6 or something, but the basic, automation modes, cut solo is all here. Also, there's some additional control for things like aux levels and panning. So because it's the HUI protocol, you use the 4 controllers here. So I can, I can pan using the 4 encoders, and I can select which group of 4 channels to use. But realistically, you have a touch screen and you have a mouse, so I want to mention that it's here, but for some things, like maybe the pan is useful, or maybe the aux is useful for if you're generating a headphone mix inside Pro Tools, say. But for plug-in editing or something like that, it's much more useful to use a touch screen or the mouse. I wouldn't want to pretend that this is because you only have the 4 encoders. It's not something we want to spend too much time talking about, just because it's not the best way for that. The HUI is very useful for faders and this sort of thing, but we're not going to pretend that it's a complete way to control everything. But that's again why we made sure it's a touch screen, because things like the on-screen plug-in controls, sometimes it's nice just to touch something, and it's much quicker than trying to assign it here to a knob and then checking and then moving this. But it is there, and you can. So these has 16 dedicated DAW faders, but you have the possibility of controlling 32 faders. So when I press the DAW button, this is only a small session, so it's not a good example, but we could have 32 faders mapped out across here. And of course, we can bank and nudge the faders, and so if it's a much bigger session, we can bank very easily. In 16s when we're working like this, or in 32s when we have the DAW button pressed. And then finally, we have some transport controls. And we have, I don't think this is going to work, is it? I can't see. I like it because it's like going back in time. Yeah. So we can scrub backwards and forwards with audio. It's like going back in time, like I say. And then some buttons for things like turning the click on and off and making markers and stuff like that. So I can add a marker there, and I can play on, and put one there. And as I go through, I can add markers. And I think I can keep adding them. Yeah, and then I can skip to the markers and play. So it's fast, It's nice to have the buttons for it. So that's what's happening there. Oh, and then the only other thing probably that we should talk about in this introduction is the talkback. So you have a few different types of talkback. You have one called return talkback up here, so you can have a permanent microphone in the live room. Maybe some people put them in the ceiling, or like the PZM boundary, like the crown, or the yeah. So you can have a permanent microphone installed and have a dedicated control for that. So that's very handy if you don't have a glass. If you can't see the live room, sometimes it's nice to be able to hear it there without using a channel. And then you have talkback. You can talk directly to the headphone cues, or there's a dedicated talkback output or a slate output, which can be very dangerous if you enable it, where you can slate directly to the direct outputs. So some people use it to make notes. You make like take 2, to tape. Other people disable it because you can lose your job. So, but it's nice to have this there. The other thing you can do, there's with a talkback, you can have auto talkback. So, is that right? Latch, I think. Yeah. So when I'm in stop, I can have the talkback to the headphones, and then when I play. It'll
Yeah.
cut. So depending on the job, that's quite nice. And you can set a delay so this talkback stays open for 1 second or half a second. Again, because it's software controlled, there's lots of nice little features that are just software stuff, easy. And some of this has evolved, grown with the console over time. So some of these features weren't in the original console, and it's possible to add them. So that was feedback from some customers that wanted to have this auto talkback. So the original Genesys release didn't have this, and it was added. Anything else I've missed on there? 5.1, I'll talk very quickly about 5.1. Just it's important to notice that the console panners are both LCR panners. So again, a lot of consoles just have stereo panners. These are LCR, so you can pan through left, center, right. Which again, if you're not mixing 5.1, it's not a big consideration, but it's just good to know, because otherwise, if you didn't have LCR panners, you'd have to use an aux to make a center, and you can't do a smooth pan through them. Again, we use that 2-track bus over here to make a simultaneous 5.1 and stereo mix. And there's lots of monitoring and clever things for the 5.1, which we talked about a bit. So that's a bit of an introduction. So maybe is it worth doing a few questions now and then some examples?
If you have some other questions.
So just drink some water.
I have a question from people on live streaming, yes. And the question is well, we don't really talk about the dynamics, because those console doesn't have the dynamics.
I can show you the screen.
Yeah, the screen, yes.
Yeah.
And they want to know how fast is the compressor.
Okay, well,
It's really specific, so I guess that these guys has owned the console.
yeah. Well, again, so
because
the Neve
they have a
compressors-
fast attack here, so
Yeah, the Neve compressors are usually fixed attack. The 2254, 33609, the Neve compressor is usually variable release and fixed attack.
Yeah.
And so this console has I'm gonna need to try and remember it, so maybe we can update it afterwards.
Yeah.
But it has the standard Neve attack plus the option to make it. Oh, it's not going to work because we don't have it. But you can imagine.
we don't have it. Yes, you can
We have
imagine.
the
Yes,
fast attack, which gives the later Neve compressors had the fast attack option to give a faster attack to the sound, and then variable release. So it's the same. It's a standard. No, I can't remember. So I could look it up. Maybe at the end.
maybe at the end.
I can check and give you the answer. But whatever
Ok, any other question? Avete altre domande? Siete tutti soddisfatti?
Yes, because I have used the Genesys normal.
Parla qui.
Yes, I'm satisfied.
Thank you. So, everybody looks satisfied.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
So much.
No, aspetta, fermi tutti. Clamoroso. Una domanda da Flavio. All'ultimo momento.
Just last question. We speak about MIDI interface.
Yeah.
There's some Dante or AVB implementation option in future.
At the moment, no. So at the moment, the interfacing is AES, AES audio or MADI.
MIDI, okay.
And originally, I'll give again some history if you want some history. It's
just because the sound card now are moving from MADI to this Dante protocol,
Yeah.
bigger broadcast system as well. So it would be nice to integrate this in other system with.
and it's a
protocol.
modern studio. It's very useful stuff. So at the moment, there's no immediate plans for anything. Because it's very easy, with the MADI to Dante bridges, the red box,
sure.
and so obviously we're investigating, and we're always developing new new things, but there's no immediate plans for that. But obviously, we're looking at all the network audio platforms. But just because Neve has a long history with MADI, you know, as one of the original,
Yeah, sure.
you know, types, and it's been very good to us. And so for us, we're sticking with MADI in the short term, at least, because it means that the console's independent from the technology. If we make it too like if it was Thunderbolt or USB-C, then Apple changed the interface after 2 years, and then, you know, people will replace one interface. It's no problem. But if we said to people each time you have to replace all these boards and it's very expensive, so we just made a decision that if we stay with the MADI for now. Yeah, that's it. Then so yeah, for your setup, you as it stands, you'd need the MADI bridge. But who knows in the future? Who knows? You know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're watching and seeing what happens. The other consideration is because we make digital consoles still for the film industry, and they're big channel count, 1,000 channels. So we don't. It'd be very easy to make a Dante solution for this console, for example, but then it wouldn't work directly with the digital film console because this has 1,000 paths. So we only want to do development once and make it good. So make it that the same card, same thing can work with all the systems. So we tend to move quite slowly, you know. But we move quite slowly with new products, but we make the products for a long time. So, for example, the 88. So this one, the big brother, is now 18 years of continuous production. So, which is good. It's good if you own an 88 that it's still a current model, but it means that we have to redesign. You know, a component will change, and we have to redesign the board. You know, so every board in the 88 has been probably some of them 2 or 3 times now redesigned to keep it current, you know, keep it a manufactured console. And even the Genesis, the original Genesis, I think is 8 or 9 years now, maybe. So we make things. We have a long production run. We don't change the products every 2 or 3 years, which is good and bad, depending on whether for marketing people it's bad, and for hardware people it's good. You know. Yeah. I hope no marketing people are listening.
Yes, no marketing
I'm
people
trouble.
are listening. No.
Yeah. It's too late for them now. They won't be listening now.
No, they're having aperitivo. As
Exactly.
You say.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So.
Is there any other things just before we could do some audio examples and maybe people could try it out and.
Yeah, later maybe.
Yeah.
We need to close.
So, just any other questions whilst we have this moment? No.
So I have control.
Yeah.
And I speak Italian.
Please. Good. I'm going to drink some water then.
Yeah, you can have some water, of course. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry for the.
È una macchina quest'uomo, è incredibile. È pazzesco, veramente. Grazie per. Thanks again.
Thank you for.
No. Thanks to you. Ok, adesso abbiamo finito di farci i complimenti a vicenda, quindi volevo ringraziarvi voi per essere venuti qua e a tutti quelli che ci hanno seguiti da casa. Spero che il seminario vi sia piaciuto, sia stato di vostro interesse. È stato bello veramente incontrarvi, avete tutte delle provenienze diverse, da fonici a produttori a studenti. È veramente bello questo fatto che si sia creato un punto di incontro. Ricordo a tutti che organizzeremo altri seminari. Il prossimo è già venerdì 22, quindi è già programmato per il prossimo venerdì. C'è ancora qualche posto libero, potete iscrivervi liberamente sul nostro sito seguendo sempre il link Funky Junk ITV, dove troverete tutti i dettagli per poterlo fare. Grazie ancora per essere venuti, e volevo anche ringraziare i miei colleghi, perché hanno lavorato veramente tanto per rendere possibile questa diretta. Gente che è venuta con la febbre, gente che ha fatto un casino pazzesco, e anche le mie nostre colleghe che hanno preparato per voi qui fuori un banchetto che io definirei interessante. Esatto. Quindi, James, time is over.
Great.
And now it's time to have some Italian wine.
This is the best part of coming to Italy.
Yes.
Yeah.